Well, hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Wild Your Garden, and stick around because in this video I'm going to tell you the 10 best ways you can help wildlife in your garden at this time of year. Now, before we go on, I should say, if you are new to the channel, if you have just found me for the first time, if this is the first video you're watching, then please feel free to subscribe to the channel. It goes a huge way in supporting me making these videos, and obviously sharing the content means that it's great because we reach a wider audience of people around the world, because these videos are designed to help you guys wherever you are. It doesn't matter whether you're in the UK, Australia, America, India, Africa, I don't care. I want to help you guys make as many habitats for wildlife as possible. So please, if you can, support the channel by hitting the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and then you will of course be notified every time I upload a video. And thank you so much to you all for doing so. We're now at 43,000 or something subscribers. So it's a wonderful, wonderful community on here. So stick around, lots more cool content to come in videos to come, I can assure you. Anyway, without further ado, let's start by discussing the 10 ways we can help wildlife at this time of year. You might think it's autumn time, there's not a lot I can do, just let the garden naturally go into diapause, just let it go to sleep on its own accord. You can, but there's a few things you can do which obviously will help wildlife greatly. So let's get started. Number 1. Don't cut back all your hedges. I cannot stress this enough, and you may have seen on the channel already, I have done a previous video on all the reasons why you should not cut back your hedgerows at this time of year. If they've been left, and if they've flowered in the spring and they've now berried in the autumn, you should have a plethora of berries on offer for all our autumn birds, our thrushes, many other species of wildlife as well, mice, voles, all sorts of things that can climb trees, insects that are still around at the moment. Even though we're almost at the end of November, there are still insects in the air. So please, if you can, don't cut back all your hedgerows at this time of year. If you absolutely have to cut them back, then do cut them back sort of end of February time, once all the berries have been eaten by all the winter visiting birds. And this doesn't matter, it doesn't matter where you are around the world, this can apply to wherever you are. So please leave the berries on your hedgerows for the birds at this time of year. Number 2, don't cut back all your grass. I know it may be too late for a lot of you, and you may have already done the last hay cut of the year, the last mowing of the lawn if you like, but if you can, if you haven't done already, please leave some of the areas around the edge of your lawn or your grass, your mown area, whatever you've got, because this will provide some vital shelter for a lot of animals through the winter months, particularly voles and mice that are still around, obviously, that aren't, you know, hibernating on colder days. They might still be hunting for insects and things. And also a lot of larvae will be overwintering in the bottom of these tussocks of grass. So things like caterpillars of a lot of moth species, a few butterfly species as well, will be tucked right down in the bottom of these tussocky grassy areas, if you like. And also you can leave it throughout the winter time and throughout the rest of the year. Leave some tussock areas, because that, my friends, will bring you grasshoppers, which are an absolute joy to behold in the summer months, when obviously you get this constant, yeah, fantastic to hear. That's a rubbish impression, but I love hearing grasshoppers. I've done it in my own garden many a time, left the edges, grasshoppers have moved into the garden. How many of you can say that you've actually got grasshoppers in your garden these days? Not many of you, I bet. And if you do, well done to you. Number 3, don't clear up all your leaves. I know it's so tempting to get all the leaves raked off your lawn, cleared out of your borders, because we've got this mentality through the last century or two where we have to have neat and tidy gardens. Scrap that idea. Forget what the neighbours think. We absolutely need to leave leaf litter. If it's in your borders or if it's under trees, it's obviously a great mulch. The worms will drag them underground in time, and they will just add fertility to the ground when it's under your shrubs and your trees. It's nature's way. You know, trees, deciduous trees in particular, have evolved over the millennia to create their own leaf litter, to create their own fertility. I mean, how amazing is that when we think about it, that these silver birch trees along with the oak trees behind me will all create their own nutrient in the soil, which is just fantastic for them to feed back off. So everything gets recycled. And the main reason you shouldn't clear the leaves, apart from the fact that it's feeding the trees and the shrubs and the roots obviously underground, is that a lot of animals, insects in particular, caterpillars, larvae of all sorts, will be in this leaf litter over winter, sheltering from any harsh frosts, etc. And of course, if you've got a big enough pile of leaves, then you may just find a hedgehog in the middle of them in the winter months, which of course hopefully you won't disturb, but they will obviously use big leaf piles and all the rest of it. So if you absolutely have to clear leaves up, put them in a pile in the corner of your garden. Don't just put them in a plastic bag and chuck them out for the rubbish truck to come and collect, or put them in your green bin. Keep them in your garden. They will create a fantastic refuge for so much life. Number 4, if you absolutely have to do any pruning at this time of year, let's say for example your rose bush has gone absolutely out of control like mine has in my own garden, and you do have to cut some branches off, then put them on top of the pile of leaves we've just spoken about, because this will add additional cover, additional habitat for lots and lots of wildlife. In particular, hedgehogs as well will obviously move to the middle of this lovely dense clump of vegetation. And of course the vegetation itself, the decomposing wood, you know, without burning it or putting it through a shredder, by leaving it in the garden, you know, you can attract all kinds of cool fungus and mushrooms and things that will obviously grow on these logs, lichens, mosses, and all sorts of cool stuff. And then the rotting deadwood itself, created from this new pile in your own garden, will provide a habitat for so many insects, woodlice, millipedes, centipedes, spiders, all sorts of cool stuff that will inhabit these kind of loggy stacks. Obviously you can add those to it as well, logs, if you've got some logs in the garden. It will just create a really cool bit of infrastructure, but obviously don't keep the logs too heavy on top, else it might squash everything right down, and then of course it's not as much of a viable habitat for hedgehogs. So number 4 is, if you've got any cutting to do, add them to your existing pile. Don't shred them, don't put them in your green bin, keep them in your garden. Number 5. Now, many of us in our own gardens as garden lovers will have herbaceous borders, which are herbaceous perennials, plants that come back year after year, generally non-native plants, or if they are native, they're a mix of, you know, the two, if you like. But these are a wonderful border, of course, for attracting many pollinating insects. But we have almost a disease, I would say, where we feel the absolute necessity to cut everything back as soon as it's finished flowering, or as soon as we get to October and the garden starts looking tired and untidy and unkempt. Then we need, in our own minds, to tidy this up. Well, my advice to you for point number 5 is, do not cut back all your dead stems of your herbaceous perennials. Reason being is twofold really. One, things like earwigs, ladybirds, a lot of them will overwinter in those hollow dead stems that are in your borders, and I know it's really tempting to cut them back, but please don't. And also because plants such as the lesser knapweed or teasels, if you've got those in your garden, many of us have got teasels in the garden, many plants that produce seed will be very attractive. Things like Verbena bonariensis as well, my all-time favorite herbaceous perennial, non-native I should say, but it doesn't matter. They will provide a really viable seed food source for a lot of birds, in particular in the UK, things like goldfinches, but wherever you are around the world, there will be seed eaters that will really make the most of these seed heads naturally in the course of the winter months, because it's another source of food for them. So my advice to you would be to wait, please. Put away these shears or the loppers or the secateurs and do it in sort of March time. I sometimes even do mine in early April, because you know, wait till there's lots of sort of fresh, if they're perennials, it means they come back year after year, they will generally have a nice basal floret of fresh green leaves appearing at the bottom throughout the winter months, especially into February, March and April. And I even do mine, like I say, into April time, before they start sending flower spikes, depending on what plant they are. So number 5, don't cut back all your dead stems in your herbaceous borders. Number 6, make a compost heap. I know this sounds blindingly obvious, but get some old pallets. It costs nothing half the time. Your neighbour might have some, or you know, somebody's had a delivery of slabs for a new patio they're putting in up the road and there's a pallet lying on the driveway. Beg, steal and borrow some pallets or whatever you can, some recycled wood, and make yourself a simple open-sided compost heap to let the air get in. The black tumbler ones are okay, but I find everything in the garden rots quicker with the natural kind of airflow through it, and the ability for worms and everything else to come up from the ground underneath and rot everything down. So make a compost heap out of some pallets or old wood, like I say, and then you can put all your grass cuttings in it, all your vegetation from your hedge trimmings if you've done some, all your dead stems from your herbaceous perennials. And you can have 2 or 3, so you can actually alternate them, and these in turn will be a wonderful habitat for things like slow worms, grass snakes, loads of other reptiles, amphibians, depending on where you are around the world. And if you're in the UK, from bitter experience I can tell you that if you have some offcuts of sort of roofing felt or anything sort of dark, any old carpet, just to keep that area, cap it off once all your vegetation is in there, that'll keep it warmer and make it more appealing as an incubation site for things like grass snakes, which is just wonderful. And slow worms as well will love these compost bins here in the UK. So number 6 is get a compost bin in your garden. They in turn will add another level of biodiversity to your garden. Number 7, if you have a wildlife pond, and hopefully many of you do through watching a lot of the videos on the channel, then I strongly recommend you don't cut back all the vegetation around the pond edge. If you have to, leave some vegetation all year round. If you have to cut some back, then just do it selectively. Don't cut it all, because if you leave some vegetation all year round, that provides some hunting grounds, if you like, or a hunting ground for things like the baby frogs that come out of the pond, the very small frogs that'll be less than 1 inch long, at the end of the summer months and into the autumn and the winter. So on milder days when they are out and they are hunting for insects and other invertebrates to feed on, then this long grass is a really good sort of belt of cover for them to find that food source. So don't cut everything back in your wildlife pond in the autumn months. And also, if you feel the need to cut back some of the dead stems, then don't, because things like the common fleabane, purple loosestrife, I know purple loosestrife, before anybody says, I know it's classed as invasive in the States, but I'm just using it as an example here because it's obviously one that I plant a lot of here in the UK, and it is good for so much wildlife. But purple loosestrife in particular, common fleabane, hemp agrimony, these are all going to be, again, really viable food sources for a lot of birds through the winter months, all our seed-eating birds, things again like goldfinches, because they're going to be holding a lot of seed in those heads, those dead flower heads, over the winter months. So if you can, please leave your vegetation. Again, adopt the same principle as you would do to a herbaceous border. Cut all your dead stems back in March time if you feel the need. Things like your rushes, so hard rushes and sedges and things, I generally tend to leave them all year round because they provide, again, really good year-round cover. You might be fortunate enough to get something like a snipe or a woodcock drop in, depending on where you are in the country. They might just visit your pond if there's lots of cover around them, spend the night before they move on. This time of year we get lots of woodcock start coming in, well, actually a little bit earlier than this, usually sort of first week in November, start coming into the UK from the continent, and they sort of drop in left, right and centre. I remember looking out my office window one day and just seeing one go flying straight past. So number 6, don't cut. There's another dog featuring in the video. This is Prince, where we're working at the moment down in Southampton. So yes, number 6, don't cut all the vegetation from around your pond. So number 8, now is absolutely the time of year to be thinking about planting bare root trees and shrubs in your own garden. Now, bare root just means the tree or the shrub is without soil, if you like, so there's no pot, and generally they are cheaper than containerized plants. So you get a lot more bang for your buck, if you like, and it's better to buy them at this time of year. And if you plant them now, between certainly in the UK, that our bare root season runs from the beginning of November through until roughly the end of March. But if you can, sort of November, December, January and into February is an ideal time to get these plants and trees and shrubs in the ground so that they can establish through the spring and into the summer months, because otherwise if you're buying containerized trees and shrubs throughout the summer months, obviously you've got to think about watering, and there's less chance of them establishing if you haven't got the time to look after them or keep them well watered. So the bare root trees and shrubs, get them now if you can through until the end of March, and do get in touch if you're looking for any bare root trees and shrubs. As I say, we do have them on the wildyourgarden.com online shop, along with a whole host of other wildflowers, of course, which again, I mean, today where I am now in Southampton, on the south coast, if you like, in the UK almost, we are planting some wildflowers. We're planting devil's bit scabious, common fleabane, marsh roomwort as well, just to add some species diversity to this existing 4-acre meadow that we come back and manage and add to every year, where we're trying to encourage a colony of marsh fritillary butterflies, which is, yes, quite a feat if we can achieve it. But so that's why we've been planting devil's bit scabious for them as a larval food plant. Anyway, I digress, but what I'm saying is now is a perfect time, and yesterday I was planting a pond as well. Perfect time to plant 9cm potted plants into your lawn, in and around your pond, all that sort of stuff. So do get in touch if you're after any wildflowers. It's a really good time of year to do that. But like I say, point number 8 is bare root trees and shrubs. Think about getting some in your garden at this time of year. It's a great time to get them established before the onset of spring and into summer, so that they can get their roots down and tap into a water source, so you don't have to water them as much through the summer months. Number 9, don't cut back your ivy. And now I know it's very tempting again to be drawn into this kind of tidiness regime of cutting everything back at this time of year, but don't cut back your ivy for many reasons. At the moment it's still flowering, it's still providing nectar, and even today, we're towards the end of November, I've seen a red admiral zoom past as we've been planting through the meadow. So yes, ivy is a really good source of nectar for so many insects, in particular late autumn species such as the comma butterfly here in the UK, red admiral, as I've already said, wasps, hoverflies, all sorts of stuff. And equally, the berries that then form throughout the winter months will provide a viable food source for many other birds as well. Not only that, ivy is a really good roosting habitat for things like bats when it's on trees, for example. Dense ivy is really good for them, and also things like the brimstone butterfly here in the UK. They will often overwinter as well. They do overwinter as an adult, but they will often use ivy as a refuge over the winter months. So a really good source of refuge for them. If you absolutely have to cut your ivy back because it's got too big and it's, you know, half your shed roof is about to fall in because there's too much ivy on top of it, try and do it in the spring if you can, before the birds start nesting. Ivy is obviously a very dense forming climber, so it will provide a really good habitat for birds such as song thrush, blackbirds, robins to nest in. So if you can, cut it back probably towards the end of February, once all the berries have been eaten, even into early March, just before the birds start thinking about nesting. But ivy is absolutely brilliant at this time of year. So please, number 8, don't, or number 9, I forget, doesn't matter. Don't cut it back at this time of year. It's such a wonderful resource for many forms of life. Number 10. Now, all I can say, and you might feel a bit robbed on this one, is that number 10 is just to generally not be as tidy as you might want to be. Now, I know that's kind of a summary of all the other 9 points I've just made out, but it really is imperative that to create a wildlife garden, you have to let nature live. You can't just keep cutting things back year after year after year. You knock back the flowers on our hedges, which means you don't get the berries. You knock back the dead stems in the winter time for insects to overwinter in. All the stuff we've been talking about in this video today is absolutely vital to provide an entire ecosystem in your own back garden, which is at the end of the day exactly what we're trying to do on this channel, and what you guys should be trying to do at home is to create a mini oasis, if you like. It doesn't matter if you're in the middle of central London, if you're in the middle of anywhere, any large city around the world. It really is an absolute pit stop for so well, and a home. It should be. You should see your garden as a home for so much wildlife, because if you provide the shelter that they need, which is all the things we've been talking about today, longer grassy areas, log piles, we've not so much touched on log piles, but it's another good one. Have a bonus one on me. There you go, stick some log piles in your garden, half bury them, great for beetles. I'll come on to that properly another day, but there's a bonus one. Yes, but if you can, like I say, think about all the things we've spoken about: longer grassy areas, leaf piles, piles of branches or brash, as I would call them, you know, making a compost heap, not cutting everything back. Forget what the neighbours think. It really doesn't matter. I would honestly try these methods and you will be amazed at just how much life comes into your own garden. And who knows, it might just click on and maybe one or two of the neighbours might start doing it as well. And I think the most important message you can try and spread is exactly the fact that we need to be less tidy. To anybody you come across, your neighbours, you know, as soon as we get out of the mindset of thinking as soon as the summer is done, as soon as everything's flowered, it needs to be cut back, we are removing the shelter and the food for so much life that could be in our garden in the winter months, when, let's be honest, everything else is looking pretty drab, or everything in the garden's looking pretty drab once we get past the leaf fall in autumn. So it really is a great way. I mean, last year I had dozens of field fares and redwings visiting because I had all the berries on the holly tree. And again, you know, by just encouraging the birds into your garden with feeders, you can also encourage them just as easily by not cutting everything back, by providing those berries as a food source, as we've already spoken about. So I really hope this video has gone some way to encouraging you guys to not worry about how your garden looks and to think more about the needs of the natural world, because at the end of the day, our gardens are fast becoming a refuge for wildlife. If we think about the wider countryside, here in the UK, 74% of our countryside is now agriculture. So that's a huge portion of the land, which is, I don't want to generalize, but quite often a monoculture, where there is far less life than you could get in 50 square meters in a wildlife garden. Trust me on that one. So I really hope this gives you the inspiration, guys, to encourage more wildlife into your garden. Have a go at some of the things I've said above. Let me know how you get on. Drop some comments in the video below, and obviously I'll be happy to help if you have any questions. And as always, please feel free to share these videos, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell, and I will be sure to bring you many more videos on all the ways in which you can help wildlife in videos to come. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. I'll see you soon.